So when you click your seatbelt, you're turning that buzzer that's causing you annoyances off. That's negative reinforcement. Punishment is different. Punishment is a shock collar on a dog in your yard, and you have an invisible fence around the outside of your yard so that the dog learns if they get too close, they're going to get zapped. I like to joke that monitoring your credit, which is how almost all companies react to a breach. They say, we'll buy credit monitoring for you. It's like living next to a fire station, but not fireproofing your home, because the fire station's right there. They'll put out my fire in my house immediately. No, your house is still on fire. You could say the same thing about police officers and law enforcement about breaking and entering, right? There are homes all over the world and people are going to break in no matter what. But does that mean you leave your front door and windows unlocked and the lights off at night and you don't have a guard dog or a gate or a padlock?
What do slots machines have to do with cybersecurity?
Slot machines are the most powerful reinforcement schedule known to mankind for changing behaviors. They're highly addictive because it's an intermittent reward schedule. In other words, you never know when your reward's going to come from pulling that slot machine over and over again, but it could be the next pull. And so you keep pulling and you keep pulling, and many people become addicted to it. It changes behaviors in humans because they want that rush of winning something. And it ties back to psychology. And we look at behavior theory in psychology. When I did that degree 30 years ago, we looked at positive rewards, punishment theory, and what changes behaviors best. And if you're a parent out there and listening to this, you know that you can shout at your child to get them to stop some behavior, but that's more of a punishment, and that behavior is going to come right back. But if you find a reward for good behaviors in your children that replace the bad behavior or redirect them to a good behavior, hopefully that sticks and you'll have better outcomes in the long run. And truthfully, when you look at cybersecurity, we want the same thing. We want to reward and encourage the good behaviors that our employees need to show to replace the bad behaviors, such as clicking on phishing links or reusing passwords everywhere you go, that sort of thing.
Is punishment the same as negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement, or do we separate it out?
They're different things. So are you familiar with that dinging in your car when you don't put your seatbelt on?
Very familiar. Oh, sorry, never heard of that.
Okay. That's negative reinforcement. In other words, it's getting you to do something to remove a stimulus. So when you click your seatbelt, you're turning that buzzer that's causing you annoyances off. That's negative reinforcement. Punishment is different. Punishment is a shock collar on a dog in your yard, and you have an invisible fence around the outside of your yard so that the dog learns if they get too close, they're going to get zapped. But you have to remember to put the shock collar on. You have to remember to charge it, because if it dies, the dog's going to get close. There's a growing tingling sensation before the shock. And if there's a squirrel or a rabbit across the road, dog's going to ignore that shock collar, go straight through that shock and get the rabbit, right? And possibly get injured. That's punishment. And positive reinforcement is saying, okay, gamification. In a platform that teaches cyber literacy skills like my company's, we try to reward employees for completing assignments, for building their cyber literacy. We give them certificates and other ways to reward the good behaviors of really dialing into, for example, how phishing works, right? Typo squatted domain names and urgency and emotionality, these kind of hallmarks of phishing. When a user learns those things, we reward them to encourage that. Initially, it's an external encouragement from the tool, but over time, that becomes intrinsic within the person as they become confident in their knowledge and their abilities and their ability to process email quickly, efficiently, and securely.
What about electrified fences?
Electrified fences are punishment. Absolutely.
Just checking. Okay. So I want to go into that deeper, but before that, I'm curious, for someone who might not have thought about it too much, is it unusual for someone to start with a psychology degree and end up in cybersecurity, or is everybody that and it just sounds unusual?
It is unusual. I think there's more and more today. There are degrees in cybersecurity. So you can become a cybersecurity specialist. You can get a 4-year degree. I think there are even masters and possibly PhD programs. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was nothing. But as the field has emerged, the psychology background that I have has proven extremely helpful in most of my leadership roles of building cybersecurity programs for Fortune 500 companies. I've been able to use the psychology to convince employees that they maybe were the one deciding to do this very secure approach to things, because I painted a picture maybe of where we would all end up, and the project would be on time and it would be secure, and there weren't any 11th hour curveballs when the cybersecurity guy got involved and said, "Oh, you can't do it that way, we've got to stop." Right? No, let's get involved early, talk about it, and we can find ways to make your project work on time, on budget, and deliver what you're responsible for with just a few changes in the beginning, right? So, psychology plays a role in any leadership position anywhere in a company today, whether it's cybersecurity or CFO or CEO, that sort of thing. It's very helpful.
A lot of people have this picture of hacker movies where they type very furiously and suddenly they say, "I'm in." Is any of that ever true, or is it always like psychology and just getting around getting someone to click something? What's the landscape
Well,
like in modern day today?
it's both. I think if you ever saw the show Mr. Robot on TV, he used a lot of social engineering to physically breach companies. He would dress as the janitor or the mailman or the Verizon representative, right? Come in with a hat on, keep his head down, act like he belongs there. All of that is psychology of belonging and displaying behaviors that show confidence that you're exactly where you should be and you have a job to do and you're going to go get your job done and minimum of disruption, piggybacking and tailgating, all these other philosophies. That's all part of hacking in the physical realm. In the electronic realm, it's almost all delivered via email and weak passwords. Verizon data breach did a longitudinal study of the last 20 years of how breaches happened in 2003 and how they happened in 2023. And they compared all the breach data they collected over that 20-year period. Number one was phishing the entire time. Number two was password hygiene the entire time. Now, what's different today than back then is that the attacks now are more frequent, they're more impactful, they're more damaging, they're more successful in many cases because AI is playing into things now. There are hacker organizations where one group of a hacker organization, all they do is breach companies. And then they sell that breach to someone else. And all they do is they deploy malware, ransomware, or data exfiltration tools, or a variety of different things. There's a Henry Ford approach, that assembly line where one person turned nuts on a wheel and another person installed seats, another person painted. They're doing that in hacker organizations today.
And I'm guessing a lot of crypto miners that people want to install.
Yeah. Yes. When I hear crypto mining, I breathe a sigh of relief sometimes because I get calls in the middle of the night sometimes for a security incident. And if it's a crypto miner, the response is really easy, right? Most of the time, it's not a human that's been inside the network on that machine. It's ransomware that's been pulled down and it's been infiltrated, maybe JavaScript or something innocuous that got it there. There's been no data exfiltration. There's been no land and expand throughout the network. So we're not trying to find people that have broken into the company. It's basically just been, I'm going to create and see if I can find the next Bitcoin address space and send it to the hacker. And I'm just using your CPU cycle. So the recovery is really easy. Refresh that machine and we're done. Case closed. When it's not a crypto miner, it's a lot more work, right? How did they get in? What did they breach? What data did they exfiltrate? Do you have logs to prove that? Can you prove they're not still there? There's a lot more work.
I think refreshing or burning with fire is probably what most people would call it. So my background is in site reliability in platforms, and I've worked a lot with Kubernetes, and I've watched Kubernetes go from what's Kubernetes to what do you mean you don't have Kubernetes in a short few years. And I had a conversation with a friend not that long ago, and it was about what do you do when you noticed that you've been infiltrated? Because there's so many ways you can hide inside once you've got access to the cluster, that really only way to know that you've got them out is to burn the whole thing and rebuild it. So it's like interesting with stuff like Kubernetes, you've got a lot of good defaults, right? It won't let you do a lot of stupid things anymore easily. It will ask you very politely not to do that. You've got a lot of tools around actual mechanical security, from like network policies to access policies and stuff like that. But at the same time, it also creates like so much more surface to hide. Just like an interesting kind of side comment on that.
Yes. Do you know the story of the FBI released last fall? They said no longer should you trust Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T's cell phone networks for SMS texting and those sorts of things, because they know hackers are inside those networks. Nation states are in Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and they cannot get them out. They can't burn the entire AT&T or Verizon network to the ground and rebuild it. And so they're playing whack-a-mole and they just can't get them out. They said, go use WhatsApp and Signal, these encrypted communication programs from Meta and so on. And a lot of us were already using those, but it goes to show you, to your point, there's a lot of attack surfaces in those companies. And once they're in, it's hard to get anybody out.
100%. So far for two-factor authentication with text, if you're one of those, probably don't do that.
Yeah, don't use SMS anymore. Actually, passkeys, we should throw a shout out to passkeys, because for anyone listening to this, it's a cryptographic hash between your computer and the website, and it can't be stolen and reused elsewhere. And it's a one-step for multi-factor authentication. You've got to have a password manager typically to hold and store the passkey and spit it out when you're authenticating. But it's a wonderful security improvement over and above passwords and MFA, SMS text message MFA.
So now that I've completely derailed your train of thought initially,
that's okay.
With the initial question of slot machines and basically what we're doing wrong with cybersecurity today, what's the answer to that? What should we be focusing on the most?
I use that dog analogy very importantly, because you can also train a dog with treats. There are many dogs that are very food motivated. And if you bring them to the dog park and you give them treats, the best example I can think of is America's Got Talent. Hurricane was this beautiful border collie that won the entire show a couple years back with the trainer on stage, and they were giving him treats all throughout this presentation. This dog was just a miracle of tricks and behaviors. His tail was wagging. He was happy. The trainer was happy. The audience was happy. Why would we ever use shock collars to train a dog? You need to think about positive ways to do this stuff. So if it works for animals, and America's Got Talent is the best example I come up with, why are we doing it with employees using the shock collar approach, punishing and shaming them and having a 3 strikes rule? If you click on 3 phishing emails at some companies, you get terminated. And if it's 1 or 2, you go sit with HR or the IT department and you say, you cannot do this ever again. You have to not click. But if you don't pair that with rewarding good behaviors and the specific behaviors you need to learn and understand, then we're missing the boat. The entire cybersecurity industry, it's worth saying, is only 35 years old at best. Medicine's been around for a couple hundred years, maybe 100 exactly, really good medicine. Law is 1,000 years old. They figured this stuff out. Plumbing, electricity, I don't care what your profession is. Those professions have been around a lot longer and have some pretty reasonable and good safety precautions and how things to protect people from the harm that can come from those professions. But with computers, we don't seem to be willing to teach this stuff. I use the analogy cyber literacy instead of computer literacy. You can graduate MIT, you'll have great computer literacy, or any Ivy League school or any college for that matter, your computer literacy will be high, but you won't be cyber literate. You won't know how social engineering works, why password hygiene matters, why you need a password manager to have hundreds of long and strong passwords everywhere you go. These things are missing from our educational institutions, but they shouldn't be.
Is it a part of the problem that all of my data has been already hacked and is available in various dumps from British Airways and Marks and Spencer and whatever anyway? So people are advised now to do anything about that?
You bring up another good point, and you're right. All of our data is out there, but not everyone has access. For instance, in the US, we have a credit report where if you want to give me a loan of any kind, you have to secure my credit report. And in the US, all these financial breaches at Experian and Equifax, and no matter where it is, the NPD breach last fall, I was in there 9 times. Every home I've lived in for the last 25 years had my full name, address, and social security number tied to that NPD breach. And most of the other rest of the US is there. But my wife and I went to Lowe's the other day, and if you got a Lowe's card, you could get 30 days to return a washing machine. And I applied and I was rejected instantly because I've frozen my credit everywhere. No one can get my credit from any of the primary and secondary credit agencies out there. And people in the US think there's three. There's actually four primes: Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, and Innovis. People don't remember that one. Those are major. There are minor credit agencies all over the place that are feeding data to those primes, those four primes, and you can get a credit score from them too. So you have to freeze it at these other places you didn't think about. But if you freeze it, then the data being out there doesn't matter because no one can get that magic number to then issue credit in my name. And so you want to freeze your credit, not monitor it. I like to joke that monitoring your credit, which is how almost all companies react to a breach. They say, we'll buy credit monitoring for you. It's like living next to a fire station, but not fireproofing your home, because the fire station's right there. They'll put out my fire in my house immediately. No, your house is still on fire. Why not stop the fire from the first place? Freezing your credit prevents that. So there are some steps with all of our data being out there. There are some steps that people can take to prevent or limit the risk, right? Not accepting every friend request on social media so that people can't send you really good spear phishing attacks. Not everybody knows your personal habits and likes and dislikes, and you should keep it that way. We should try to limit our footprint online so that people can't target us.
I've got a personal story. I'm forgetting if it was last year or the year before, but I had identity theft kind of thing. Somebody just went to a bunch of banks, used my name, address, and they actually were successful opening a few of these accounts. I just got a letter in the post saying, hey, here's your new account. And that opened my eyes to the fact that they didn't even ask for any identification or anything like that. Like they just went and like, oh yeah, you are Miko. That's great. Here's your minimal limit on this credit card. You can go. And then when I gave them a call, they were like, oh yeah, this is pretty standard procedure. We're gonna clean it all up. And I was like, what? Like, what? I can just go say that someone else. You're not gonna check me. You're not gonna check like minimum. And it was a lot of pain. I had to call a bunch of places, get all reversed. It all worked out in the end, but there was a lot of hours on the phone that I could have used doing something else.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that how it works? Is there no better way?
Well, they had to also pull your credit score. Somebody had to say, are you a good credit risk today? And get a score in addition to your social, your address, your income level, all of those things. That data is out there. That can be used to open it. But in real time, they have to go and say, what's your credit risk today? Are you a 700, a 600, whatever the numbers are within your country of jurisdiction? In the US, it's called a credit score. And so if you freeze it, that prevents that kind of thing from happening. And it's relatively innocuous to unfreeze it. If I went to buy a car one time with my daughter and co-signed for her, and I said to the car company, hey, you won't get my score. You got to tell me who you're using, and I will unfreeze it for you for today. So you pull it today. Don't pull it tomorrow because it won't work. And they did it, and I got my car, and everything was great. Okay, but I had to unlock it on the back end for the specific credit agency, for the specific company to pull my credit. That's the only way we should operate today. Now, the credit agencies don't like that at all because they can't monetize you, right? They can turn your credit score into a money-making machine. That's why they want to monitor, not freeze. In an ethical, moral world, we would freeze everyone's credit and we'd have a simple one-step process or two-step process to unlock it when you need to by proving your identity at that moment.
And
but that's not how it works because it can be monetized.
Does it work the same way in Europe as well? Or is it like a US specific thing?
I would have to ask AI that question. I'm not sure at the moment, but I imagine there's something similar. It's pretty universal that each person in the world has a score that is attached to their lendability, that could be monetized by some banks and financial institutions.
So you mentioned the keyword that triggers me always, whack-a-mole. It sounds like the whole thing really is a giant whack-a-mole when we're trying to get people to do a little bit better, and when things get bad on particular vector of attack, we try to educate people, but it's like a losing battle, right? You're not going to get everybody to be 100% proof to do that. Is that how it works? Is that the frustrating part of working in cybersecurity?
You could say the same thing about police officers and law enforcement about breaking and entering, right? There are homes all over the world and people are going to break in no matter what. But does that mean you leave your front door and windows unlocked and the lights off at night and you don't have a guard dog or a gate or a lock padlock? No, you make your house a little bit tougher to break into than, say, the neighborhood, and you put some lights on and maybe you throw up a camera or two, and that acts as a deterrent. I don't agree or subscribe to the whack-a-mole theory of humans and everyone's going to be breached. It's inevitable. I think you can do certain things to improve your defensive standing online by the things we've talked about, learning how phishing works and adopting a password manager and turning on multi-factor on all your critical accounts, especially email, banking, finance accounts, adopting pass keys. Most importantly, freezing your credit to prevent identity theft in the US and freezing it however you need to in the UK and EU. But I think holistically, until we build cyber literacy training into our educational system, add it to reading, writing, arithmetic, cyber literacy, computer literacy, then it's going to be a bit of a whack-a-mole, because I have this little thing here. I don't know if you can see this, but these are $100 gift cards, $24,000 in $100 gift cards purchased by a new employee at a company I did an investigation at about 10, 11 years ago. And that's weighty. That actually weighs amount of money. I never thought gift cards would weigh a pound or two. This person advertised on social media, "I'm so excited to be starting at this new company today. And it's my first day, my first week. Wish me good luck." And then they got an email from the president saying, "Top secret project, buy some gift cards, scratch the back, send me pictures so I can give them to our employees." And it was a fairly reasonable sized company, such that she would never, or he would never, talk to the president of the company directly. But this was all happening through email. And the person just didn't have the basic modicum of cyber literacy. They didn't realize that the email came from outside the email domain, not inside. Big red flag. They had published on social media their new employment, so they knew that this person was new and they would be targeted. And this happens all the time. Those cards are a good example. We have to address basic cyber literacy skills as early in the educational system as we can if we want to treat it as a societal problem. And I would think, with cyber crimes being the third largest economy last year after the US and China, then it wasn't a country, it was cybercrime. The profit from cybercrime was the third largest in terms of trillions of dollars for ransomware, business email compromise, and wire fraud, all those kinds of things. Until we get serious about this, it's going to continue and it's going to get worse.
Thank you for breathing a little bit of optimism in the answer to that question. So I've got a bonus question for you. Asking for a friend, if I were to start a cybersecurity company and I really wanted an owl in my logo, what would I call it and what would I do with it?
I would definitely call that CyberHoot.com.
No way.
And
that sounds great. What is that?
CyberHoot is my company I founded 10 years ago to help address cyber literacy skills at every size business, from small businesses, medium, and enterprises. We really focus heavily on rewarding and gamifying good behaviors, looking at an email very carefully with 6 or 7 components in our Hootfish exercises to teach your employees how to phish, feeding them for a lifetime of efficient, secure, confident email processing, right? We really try to push away from the fake email phish testing that measures how little everyone knows and doesn't really teach the skills you need, because there's so many flaws with that approach. We've found a better way. We've got a patent pending on it, incidentally. Also, we give it away free for individuals. So if you're listening to this and you want to give it a try, you can go to cyberhoot.com/individuals and you'll get some video trainings from us and our Hootfish positive reinforcement phishing simulation that walks you through the specifics of an email and what to look for as indicators of an attack. Not any indicator is a guarantee, but they're a suspicious or they're generally safe. And we teach you how to do that in an open book test. So thank you for asking that wonderful question. We love doing that. For any businesses that sign up on this podcast, we'll give them 20% off permanently off their rates just by mentioning the Hockeystick Show. If you put that as the referrer, we'll give you a 20% off guaranteed for life.
Look at that. A generous offer. And why an owl? Is it because of the teaching aspects?
Well, the good news about cyber literacy is it's not rocket science. We didn't pick a quantum quark or something that people have a hard time understanding. We picked an owl because it represents knowledge, and it's actually quite common. And across the world, there are owls, and it's not something that anyone has to fear. It's very common sense with a little bit of knowledge baked in. That's why we chose the owl.
And Duolingo hasn't paid you a visit yet.
I don't know if they were around before us or us before them, but no, we see owls in all kinds of logos. You're absolutely right.
Great. If you were to put a message on the billboard to steal the question from Will Ferris so that hundreds of thousands of people see it driving to work every day, what would you say on it?
If you can only do one thing, learn how to fish. If you can do two things, adopt a password manager, turn on multifactor, and learn how to fish.
Give a person a fish and they'll eat for a day. Teach them how to fish and they'll never get hacked.
That's right. Yeah, there's no guarantee, but it certainly makes you a lot harder to hack.
There you go. Craig Taylor, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show.
My absolute joy. Thank you for having me.